Hey everyone, welcome back, and today I'll be sharing with you one of MrBeast's best chess game wins in my opinion, as he basically plays a flawless attack in the middle game, which I'll be showing you shortly. Now the opening started out as the Scandinavian defense, and it quickly takes a turn and goes into a more of unusual style as MrBeast here decides to play g3, fianchettoing his bishop, which is quite abnormal in the Scandinavian, I have to say, because white develops usually with knight f3, bishop c4, and that is the recommended style. But okay, he was below 700 at the time, and opening theory isn't as important. Of course, you should still play knight f3, bishop c4, and it's better at the lower level to maintain your development and play normally, but here it's still not end of the world, and everything's fine. And in fact, here black blunders with bishop f5, leaving the b7 pawn hanging for the light squared bishop to capture and then take the rook, but MrBeast misses it. So usually this is another thing, if you're low rated and you're watching, is that you have to look out for these long range bishop moves. They're often memed upon in the chess world, and for a reason, as you see right here. It's really easy to miss them, so just keep that in mind. But okay, the game goes on, and basically the bishop taking on b7 never happened, and so far fine development. And here black plays king b8, and if you're more of sort of intermediate player or good at tactics, you should spot winning idea here. I mean, not completely winning, but like winning a pawn here, and it is bishop. In the move, white played queen d2, but the move that wins the pawn is bishop takes a7 here, and the idea is black king cannot take, because then white plays knight b5 check and hits the queen and checks the king, and white is going to pick up the queen and win the game. So instead black will have to play another move like king c8, and here white wins the pawn and also has basically nice diagonals for the bishops to work on the queen side and launch an attack in the future. So this is like completely winning for white. However, in the game, MrBeast missed that, and instead he played queen d2. Now if you want to get better at your tactics, just a quick side note, I have made a video before on how you can basically get better at spotting these tactics, so do check it out. But going back to the game here, his opponent played a6 here, and then MrBeast castled, and in this position black plays h5. Now h5 is mistake here in this position, because white can simply play g5 and close up the position, which happens in the game. But going back, the intentions behind the move are, I would have to say, good, because black is basically trying to attack on the king side because he realizes both of them are castled on opposite sides, and he basically tries to create an attack on the other side. But he did basically miss one thing, and it's usually when you're pushing a pawn and creating pawn tensions. I basically have three things that I always look out for, and it's basically first of all, what would happen if my opponent takes my pawn? In this case, that would be good because you're basically opening up the king side. But you also have to consider two other things. What happens if he just leaves the pawn tension and he does something else? And then what happens if he just pushes the pawn forward? So these are the three things I look out for, and this is something you should as well when you're playing your games. If you make a pawn move, or if your opponent makes a pawn move, look out for these three rules. And I'll also be making a more detailed video in the future on how to basically deal with these pawn breaks and pawn tensions and explain these three rules more in depth with examples. But for now, just a quick explanation. Basically look out for these three ideas, and in this position MrBeast pushes the pawn to g5 correctly. So very nice move, especially at the 700 rating level. Usually it's hard for them to not take the pawn and just immediately exchange, but here he does it nicely, pushes pawn forward. Once the knight goes back, now he continues his attack on the queen side. So he managed to close up the position for his king, keep it safe, and now he's doing the opposite. And b4 is a really nice move, because here the idea is pretty simple. Want to play b5, you want to attack the weakness that black created for himself with a6. And at first this pawn looks like it's hanging, and black takes it as well, but it's actually a huge blunder, because in this position white plays rook a b1, and this is the starting of basically a brilliant attack from MrBeast. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, first he sacrifices the pawn to create an open file on the queen side, and once the queen moves out, now he plays rook b2, a calm but really nice attacking move. Basically he wants to double up and take on b7 the next move, and This is a huge threat, and here black plays c6, which is uh, stops the bishop from looking at the diagonal. Okay, I do have to mention here, white could have immediately taken on b7. That is obviously, so rook b2 isn't the best option, but it's still nevertheless completely winning for white. It's like the second best move according to engine, and all are the same. And just ignoring the fact that he missed taking on b7, this is still a really brilliant attack. He brings the other rook, bishop is still staring down, the rooks now have a huge threat. And once he plays once black plays b5, again trying to defend his position out, because he really had no other really good ways to defend b7. Here MrBeast plays a4, again another nice move. Here black really can't push, because a move like knight a2 is sufficient, and then followed by c3 basically will break open the position, and black tries to basically just sidestep and evacuate the king from the open file, soon to be open file, with the rook staring down. First MrBeast trades once, and then here he realizes that the queen and king are aligned in a way where the knight can jump in and give a check and fork them. So he first sacrifices the rook, and then after black takes, now he jumps in with his knight, and he ends up forking the queen and the king. And once the king moves back, he takes, he also slides in his queen, and he ends up winning another piece as well. And in this position he's completely winning. And here after the king goes, it's actually forced mate in 3 with rook b7, and everything, all of white's spears are going to swarm around the black king, and it's over. But MrBeast doesn't convert in the most accurate way per se, but he still plays really nice moves. He gives those checks. Now he brings in his other knight, basically attacking the light squared bishop, and basically white is winning, so he's fine with trade. So basically he wants to take the bishop, and after rook there, again he trades down material when winning, and this pawn structure is also now very damaged, and he locks the pawn structure and making sure there's no future chaos there. And then he basically keeps on shuffling a bit per se, and then he does end up bringing his rook over, initiating more trades. And in this position he also spots a really nice fork against the king and the rook, and he ends up winning the rook. Except in this position, unfortunately, he blunders a check, and he does end up losing his queen. Not sure if this was planned out by black or ended up working out. This is why I guess you never resign. And now there's all of a sudden hope for black in this position. White is still completely winning because he has 2 passed pawns, but again, this is why you never resign, and there is hope for sure now, especially since white immediately blunders back a pawn. But black doesn't play in the most accurate way, and white manages to get his king and pawn forward. And here, even though this pawn has no immediate way of pushing forward, here's another really nice tip. It's basically the fact that you use this pawn as a threat, so this black king is basically stuck guarding this pawn forever, and the bishop works nicely with the pawn to make sure the black king can't move forward and threaten the pawn. So here white's king is free to basically go on and feast on the rest of the pawns here, and that is what happens eventually. And here white basically has 2 pawns on different sides of the boards, and it's pretty much over because now the knight has to sacrifice for 1 pawn. And it would be nice if black can just stay on d8, but you have to make a move in chess, you keep rotating, so it's sort of zugzwang, and white eventually comes in, the black king moves out of the way, and white queens. And here MrBeast does a nice job. He doesn't stalemate and ends up checkmating and winning the game in 66 moves. And if you look back in this game, there were a couple of stuff he could work on. Early on in the opening, he basically missed the fact that he could have taken on b7 with his light squared bishop. And moving forward, again, I said he had a flawless attack. Everything worked out really nicely. But again, he did miss the fact that his bishop was looking at the b7 square. So this was a reoccurring theme in the game, looking out for long diagonal moves from the bishop, and also a couple of tactics like a fork later down when he ended up hanging his queen back, and then also tactic I mentioned earlier when black played king b8. So it's about just training these tactics and you'll get better. So I hope you managed to take away a couple of lessons from this game and learn something from MrBeast's nice attack, basically attacking on opposite sides of the board, what you want to achieve on safeguarding your king and what you want to do when attacking, and also the 3 rules for pawn breaks. So that's it for today's video, and see you next time.